policy to communicate that you are not one of those unscrupulous organizations who are going to sell data to the highest bidder. As you build the registration of your event, it's important to display these policies to your audience to communicate how you are using the audience's information. We typically find that displaying these opt-ins at the point of registration is the right place to communicate these policies. Related to these privacy issues is obviously GDPR, CCPA, and other legal requirements around the world. Now, if you have a significant audience in Europe, UK, or in California, it's important that your online event is compliant with the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, EU and UK, and the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, respectively. You are responsible as the data controller of your constituents' information. And in a subsidiary manner, Saudius Media is responsible as a data processor for your constituents. Other jurisdictions around the world have similar provisions to GDPR and CCPA, and Saudius tries to keep up to date with many of these. But we've placed an emphasis on compliance with both GDPR and CCPA, as these, up to this point, have been the gold standard in relationship to privacy compliance. Saudius will provide you with all the relative documentation regarding how we use the information to aid in the smooth running of an online event, and will require you to give permission so that we can process your data. The next question in building your registration is, should I limit the number of devices per registration? Privacy issues are nothing to be afraid of. While you shouldn't be using the personal identifiable information for purposes for which you're not authorized, obtaining the consent of attendees to opt into your calls to action is often exactly what both you and the attendee want. Business models moving forward will increasingly rely upon the organization's ability to customize their services and communications to their clients. I find it both reassuring and convenient to walk into a local coffee shop where they know your name, and they've already prepared your coffee. One barrier to collecting this information, however, is when individuals share their username and passwords. And this has been a problem that Netflix and many of the other online video platforms have to deal with. When Barry from accounting tweets out his access codes and suddenly 1,500 people are using it, you have a lot of useless information about Barry. Added to the fact that you may have missed out on selling many tickets and a lot of money. For these reasons, we recommend that you limit the amount of devices per registration. When an individual buys a ticket or registers to a Saudius-powered event, a unique token is created per registration, and that is used to create the individual event journeys throughout the event. It's also possible to restrict the amount of devices that can access the event on that token. As you build the registration, it's important to consider your goals and whether you wish to restrict each token to a specific number of devices, whether it's 1 device, 10 devices, 20 devices. Audience journeys. You may choose to develop an event where every attendee is served the same content the same way. Alternately, you may wish to create an event where the audience either chooses or is placed in a custom journey related to their audience segment. In much the same way as you have choices in an in-person event, you need those same choices online. Now, this may change what content that audience segment sees, which user interface they interact with, and which other attendees they interact with as well. You may build an event where attendees get to choose what components of the event they wish to participate in and when they want to participate in it after they've entered the event, or these choices may be made by the audience during that registration process. I'm going to run through a few examples of choices that the audience can make either before registration or after registration. The first one is audience segment. Do you have a leaders track and a youth segment and a VIP segment that needs to be served different experiences, different content than the general audience? This might be determined by a ticket type in the registration process. Secondly, breakouts. Do you have multiple breakout sessions in your event, some of which should be attended by different affinity groups? Again, it is possible for individuals to opt in to this right journey for them in the registration process and therefore make an indication of which breakout they will attend at that point. Chat watch parties. In larger events, it's not advisable to have the entire audience in one chat window. Obviously, depending on how interactive the audience is. As a rule of thumb, I always say if you have an audience over 1,000, you may consider breaking your audience into watch parties by maybe geographic region or affinity group. Selecting skilled and appropriate moderators in your watch parties can add a significant value to your event. Moderators might be subject matter experts, maybe regional representatives, or maybe in a church it might be a group pastor or a cell group leader. It's also sometimes advisable to include the actual presenter in the watch party if the video being played is actually played simulated live. And so you add that live component to the event, and so people can ask questions on the fly.